Mike Dunmeyer, the stakeholder relations lead with U.S. Wind, or that's not his exact title, but same type of job. Wished he could be here today, but he did have a conflict. So I'm at your service for the meeting.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'd also like to recognize we've got two other members of the public here. Thank you for being here and participating in our committee meetings. So, other thoughts on how we can beef this up to the mayor's satisfaction?
One thought I have is that we could put something in about how the city should stay in touch with the process of, and I think there is a coalition of the mayors of coastal cities that either BOEM or I'm not sure who, but just for the, I think it's a good idea for Rehoboth Beach to kind of monitor the ongoing permitting process and make sure that if there is a stage where comments or suggestions are being considered, that we don't miss it. That we at least know what the agendas are in the schedule.
Yeah, that is certainly the plan of the mayor and myself, which is why we do want some feedback from this committee and from the Beach and Boardwalk Committee, so that the mayor and commissioners can vote on a position statement. So when there are public hearings, either the mayor or myself can go and make comment and voice concerns based on what we voted on as a city.
The one thing in terms of impact on wildlife that I've heard is from the National Wildlife Federation, which they do support offshore wind, said that the one concern they have is with the North Atlantic right whale, which is in these waters and a threatened species. So I don't know that anybody here has the expertise to monitor what these wind farms are doing to protect that species. I hope that that's part of what they'll consider when they do their siting and construction, that they'll do whatever is warranted. But other than that, I haven't heard specifically anything about marine life.
Perhaps we should ask Mr. Basin to address that. There are some activities you've taken to, or intend to take, to minimize impacts on whales or other sea creatures?
Birds, I would think. Birds.
And
too.
birds, yeah.
Yeah, I will speak to that as much as I can. I think most important is that the federal government has put out a draft plan focused on the right whale and making sure that the development of the offshore wind industry up and down the East Coast is compatible with saving that species and actually restoring it. And Ørsted has taken a look at that draft plan and is certainly in support of working with the federal government to make that happen. So there are a number of things underway. In the past, Ørsted has funded work through Rutgers University to essentially do a better job of monitoring the oceans and detecting the presence of whales so that they can be known to our crews that are out there working, and they will be able to then better avoid those whales. So developing that type of technology to do that. We're committed to continuing that type of work and that type of support. Ørsted is very much focused on biodiversity, and we want each one of our wind farms to have a net positive impact on biodiversity. So we don't want to just keep the whale population where it is. We want to facilitate its restoration, and that's our commitment.
One thing that I have heard from a neighbor who is a volunteer for mayor, he has been certified in some fashion to be on some of the, I guess, ships to monitor when there might be, mammals coming around. Is that, my guess is, given what you just said, that that's part of that proposal, is having people that are certified that can say when a species is in danger, or at least at that moment in that particular site. Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding is that that's pretty commonplace and standard for the type of work that we would be doing out in the ocean on construction activities, is to having monitors aboard the vessels.
Right.
And there's very strict protocol in place on what to do and how work is to proceed or not when a whale has been detected in the area.
Yeah.
So it's all very thorough. However, because the right whale is so endangered, we have to take extra special care for that. And I think that's the intention of this draft plan of the federal government, to really flesh that out.
And my guess also is that there'd be lots of technology that would support spotting these mammals when they're coming around, not completely relying on the human factor, but sonar and blah, blah, blah.
And that technology is being developed. So the project that we had with Rutgers, we're putting monitoring buoys out to detect through sonar the calls and the presence of the whales, which could be identified with species, and also using underwater gliders to detect. And I don't know how those technological developments will play out in the day-to-day, but that's when we do the construction, but that's the type of stuff that's being advanced right now.
Right.
And I guess migratory animals like horseshoe crabs and, flyways, birds that are migrating, coming through here. I guess you're into that too.
Yeah, that is another very important concern, and it's one there will be impacts of a wind farm on migratory birds, and with the entire industry going in, and we don't want to pretend that there's not going to be impacts. Our job is to minimize those impacts, and if those impacts cannot be avoided, to mitigate them and take care of the populations of the birds. But I think the good news going in is that part of why these wind energy areas that we're operating in were cited where they were was in part to understand and avoid those impacts to migratory birds. A lot of the birds that migrate off our coast do so much closer inland, thinking about things like loons and scoters, right? And our farm is going to be 15 miles off the coast, and so those birds are migrating a lot closer. There's less known about the migratory patterns of seabirds such as terns and plovers, and some of those birds are, of course, have more conservation concern than things like loons, right? So there's a tremendous amount of study that BOEM is supporting and that other universities are doing on this to identify ways to mitigate the impacts and avoid those impacts to the seabirds.
I would note the National Audubon Society, which is one of our premier bird groups in America, has come out in favor of wind farms because of the capacity to reduce global warming, which is a much greater threat to bird populations than any kind of wind farms. So I think that our minutes should note, didn't say anything about global warming up there or climate change, but since Delaware is the lowest lying state, subject to storms and sea level rise and those sorts of things, that's a key factor for us to keep in mind, is the reduction in global warming gases, and setting a good example for the rest of the country and the rest of the world that we need to move to clean, renewable energy to help reduce the impact of climate change.
Absolutely. That is the biggest threat to North American bird species. And I think in that report, there's something like over 300 species at risk of extinction due to climate change and the greenhouse gas emissions. So don't want to lose sight of that. This is something very important for the conservation of birds overall.
Yeah, and I feel like Mary Peck was mentioning at another meeting that, yes, there's some prices we have to pay to have wind power, but the payoff is much greater than the price we have to pay. Yeah.
Chris, I remember you mentioned that you're a fisher person, and I shared a study with some of the other members of the committee about a study that was just released the other day or so from Rhode Island, where we have an offshore wind, the only offshore wind farm we have currently, and it found no adverse impact on fish there. I guess reiterating the idea that the poles, the pylons, create an artificial reef which draws fish, making it better for recreational fishers and others. Do you know about that?
Yep, I just looked at the abstract for that yesterday, and it was released this year, and it's a fairly well-controlled study in the peer-reviewed literature. And Charlie, I think you summarized it very well. The impacts were few or non-detectable, and there was even some evidence of perhaps positive, maybe aggregation effects for fishes around the wind farm. Now, keep in mind, the Block Island Wind Farm is a fairly small installation. It's just a few turbines, and our project will be much larger in scale, but I think really encouraging results from some really good science that was done on that project.
I think we all on this committee support the offshore wind, but we're just trying to flesh out what the city of Rehoboth Beach role should be going forward in the process. And I don't know if you have any comments about that, Chris, about where you see where municipalities can be heard on whatever concerns or, I mean, I guess the two biggest things you hear around here are the viewscape and the, you know, impact on wildlife. And I guess we're kind of in the position that where we rely on the federal government to review these issues, but as the process is unfolding, where do municipalities fit in? Where should we try to focus our efforts?
Well, I think my commitment to the city is to do just that, is to keep you informed of the process and opportunities for comment and seek your input on our project and how we can improve it. And, you know, for example, you know, it's the last day, but right now the BOEM has a comment period open for new wind energy areas off of our coast. And that is an important part of any development project, right? It sets the stage for where new wind farms will occur. And so we've done some work to get that word out, and I'll continue to do that. I think that's my major commitment, is to bring that expertise and answer what questions you have, and do my best to clear up misinformation and bring the facts to the commission.
On that topic, I will say, I think at least from my mind, you failed. BOEM has failed, because this is the first time I'm hearing that today is the last day of a comment period for the new call areas.
Well, just in defense of myself, it is BOEM's process.
Yeah, I understood, but helping keep the municipalities informed, I think, is something that you and US Wind both said that you would strive to do, and this is the first I'm hearing about it. With that said, though, I don't think anyone objects to the new call areas being that they're all east of the current leased areas. So I think the closest one would be 25, 30 miles out. And I think the biggest concern that people on the beach here has is the view shed, and wanting to get them is minimize the view as much as possible. And I think that is one of the next period in which there's a comment period for the US Wind project, I think is going to be municipalities like Ocean City, perhaps Rehoboth, are going to say what we've seen a few different phases with that US Wind project. And I think phase one, which is currently mapped out in everything we've seen, I think it's like 12 or 13 miles away from shore. If they're allowed to go to phase two and build out to that northern western corner of the approved lease area, it's going to be much closer. So I think what most municipalities are going to want to advocate is they're allowed to have phase one, but not allow them to go to phase two. Which is going to be closer to shore. I suspect that's what, people that have already been fairly vocal, like the mayor from Ocean City and city manager there are going to want to, what they're going to want to advocate for when those additional comment periods are open.
One might also note that there are many people who are pleased to see wind turbines off the coast, and they're not concerned about the visual impact. Rather, they see them as lovely pieces of technology of the future, and they will probably just ignore them most of the time, just as we ignore the big old rusty cargo vessels that go by and the airplanes that zoom along saying, 4 o'clock daiquiris at Joe's place. We just ignore that and look at the beautiful things about our wonderful ocean.
All very true, all very true. I will, just because you had mentioned, my recollection with involving the whales and the threat to them is, and I don't know if it was part of U.S. Wind's COP plan or if BOEM specifically said it, but they will have watchers on site, and when a whale is seen, they will cease operations for a period of time until they've not seen one for a period of time. So I'm fairly certain that BOEM confirmed that that is accurate and part of what their expectation would be. Anything else? Yeah, David, please come on up.
Hi, good morning. Dave Diefendorfer, city resident. So this question, it's an environmental concern for me. It might be a little technical, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I'd like to know what the fire protection plan is for those wind turbines, not if they catch on fire, when they catch on fire. It's a known fact that wind turbines do catch on fire. They're subject to lightning strikes. The older wind turbines are not a direct drive wind turbine. They used they have the blades attached to a reduction gear, which is attached to the generator, which has oil in it. So thus the fire can cause an environmental problem. So this is probably way too technical, but I'd like to put it in there. What's their plan when it catches on fire? How do they put it out? What's the fire protection plan to squelch the fire? Is the Coast Guard going to have to respond to it? Or are you waiting to wait for the rain to shut it down? I ask these questions because I'm a certified fire protection engineer. Thank you.
Orsted, is that something you're able to answer or comment on?
I don't know that information myself right now, but I can definitely get you that information if you have a card. In fact, the whole commission for that, so.
So I think, Charlie, I think you summed it up well, and I think first and foremost, the driving factor for this committee in recommending that the city support offshore wind is, the threat of climate change, and that is a direct threat on humanity. So I think that's one of the things that we need to start off with is being key.
We could go on and on about the virtues of wind power and how electricity is clean and it could reduce our dependence on overseas sources of oil if everybody drives around in electric cars powered by those wind turbines. But we could leave all of that unsaid for a future time.
I mean, I think the fact that, it's going to be feeding the power grid here in Delaware is a positive thing as well. Any other thoughts on this? I think this gives us a little bit more what the mayor and commissioners are looking for. So I will add some of these points in here. Any other comments from the public? Anything else from the committee? All right, well, why don't we take it to landscape equipment next on the agenda. And Mary, I'll pull up your sheet here and let you start with it. Offshore is one word, 2 words. Thank you. And I am does not like the file here.
Thanks for coming, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Was he involved in the suit? They got the wastewater treatment facility to have to be upgraded?
Yes. Goes back a ways.
Pardon me. There we go. You want to take it away, Mary?
Sure. So I tried to put the proposal for a ban of gas-powered lawn and garden equipment into the format that the mayor likes to see. So I'll just, try to very briefly summarize since you've all been through it with me. But I gave a little background about how we started to consider this based on some complaints that we had had from residents about noise. And then knowing that Lewis had already had a ban of gas power equipment, we thought that it was something that we could pursue. So I spent some time, and I have to admit, this is not an area that I knew all that much about beforehand going into this. And in fact, we own a gas-powered leaf blower ourselves, so at which we are getting rid of very shortly. And my husband's getting an electric leaf blower for Christmas. But anyhow,
I hope he's not watching and just.
I know he doesn't watch, so he might watch afterwards. But so anyhow, we have spent months with various people coming in and giving statements, and what I heard was that the two big companies, Spassato and Sussex Tree, were not against this ban. They said it's kind of the way the industry's going. There are a lot of advantages to it, lower fuel costs, maintenance, and easier. They're more lightweight, easier on the employees, and that there's a lot of advantages to using electric or battery-powered equipment. And we even had one contractor who came in and said that he has a 100% electric company. So hearing that, I guess we all felt good about proceeding, but the committee was concerned about the economic impacts. We had one person testify, a landscaper testified that he was concerned about his upfront costs of replacing his equipment, but that he would have to charge more to his customers. He didn't say it would actually put him out of business. He would just have to raise his fees. So anyhow, we've all heard all of this discussion and concluded, I guess the committee as a whole concluded that the fair approach would be to have a phased-in ban where we'd start with the city and city contractors, and next go to commercial operators, and next go to private property residents and owners. And so the only thing I guess maybe that you all on the committee might want to take a look at on what I've come up with a proposed ordinance are the dates and the way I handled it, which was for each of those three categories, I have 2 dates. First, the handheld equipment, then the lawnmowers second. And then, I'm very ever mindful of the fact that the UN report says that they give 2030 as a big deadline that we have to reduce greenhouse gases by 43% by 2030. So I didn't think it was a good idea to stretch this implementation out for years and years and years. So I started off with the city and its contractors will next year eliminate, starting December 31st, 2023, which really means the landscape season of 2024, no more handheld. And then the following year, the lawnmowers. And one thing I will point out is that, just for your knowledge, Lewis has not banned lawnmowers. They've only banned the handheld equipment. So that's more of a big deal for that, if that we're proposing that. And then the second group are the commercial operators, which then I have at, December 31st, 2024, handheld, and then 2026 lawnmowers. And then for private property owners, December 31st, 2025 would be the end of handheld equipment, and December 31st, 2027, gasoline-powered lawnmowers. And then I stuck the large tree removal provision in because, and I don't know if everybody thinks we need this or not, but the landscape companies that were in here one day said that they felt that the electric equipment had some safety issues for removing large trees, that they didn't think it was safe for somebody to be up in a tree with cords and whatnot. So I don't know enough about it to evaluate that, but I thought we could put this as a discretionary matter with our city arborist. If somebody comes in and says, I want to remove a large tree and I want to use a gas-powered chainsaw for safety reasons, she can grant that request if she thinks it's appropriate. So that's the basic proposal. I think if you recall at our hearings, we did have one gentleman who was very upset about the idea of having to phase out his lawnmower, but he, I guess he didn't agree with some of the information about the impact of gas-powered equipment. And I didn't realize how bad they were until I got into this, but gas-powered vehicles have a lot of emission controls on them, and these gas-powered lawnmowers and leaf blowers and whatnot have none, and so they really are very polluting. So anyhow, I guess what we need to decide is whether these dates make sense and whether the way I structured it makes sense. But I assume that once we recommend it to the mayor and commissioners, certainly they would be having public hearings before anything would be adopted within the city of Rehoboth.
Ask a question, Mayor. What handheld gasoline-powered equipment is there besides leaf blowers and chainsaws?
Well, apparently, and I was just reading about how Lewis has everything but
Lawnmowers.
They said they have everything but leaf blowers, and they had some. We were kind of puzzled. What else is there? And then I read in the paper there's something called a string trimmer, and there's also like hedge trimmers and like various trimmers other
Weed
than
whacker.
yeah,
Weed
then the,
whacker, yeah.
Okay,
yeah, the leaf
Yeah.
blower. So
all righty.
yeah.
But we are considering the leaf blowers, even
Yeah.
though Lewis did not consider those.
No, they are considering leaf blowers. They are not doing lawnmowers.
Lawnmowers, okay.
So, there's the one category of the handheld equipment, the smaller stuff that the people hold, and that would be the leaf blowers and the trimmers and also the chainsaws, which are pretty big, and then the second category is just a lawnmower. And the other thing we heard from, I guess it was Ed O'Connor, there's not a lot of call for like a big riding lawnmower here in Rehoboth Beach. There might be a few properties large enough that, but your typical property in Rehoboth Beach has a very small, 50 by 100 So I don't know that there, very many people really need a big lawnmower around here, but
Are those, do you know if those larger ones have any kind of technology that prevents a lot of pollution similar to a car?
apparently they're not legally required to. I don't know whether any of them do.
Okay. Mhm.
I'd like to remark that I got a Christmas tree and they trimmed off the bottom edge so that it would have a clean cut and it would absorb water better. And they used a battery-powered chainsaw that looked pretty big. And the woman who was running it, we called her not Lumberjack, but Lumber Jill. And so I'm just commenting that the equipment is out there, it's on the market. People are using clean battery-powered lawn equipment.
Yeah.
And I think, if I may further, Mary's done a great job of putting this together. I think I have no quibble with the dates. I think we ought to approve this and send it on to the mayor and commissioners.
I agree with
I
you.
second.
I think yeah, the dates are very reasonable, very, very reasonable.
The one thing that I thought we had talked about and agreed on is that in the gas-powered handheld equipment, we would include chainsaws up to 13 inches, and then anything above 13 inches would then be at the discretion of the city arborist.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember.
Am I
it was exactly
am I
like that.
remembering that correctly?
I don't remember that
I remember
detail.
something like that.
Yeah, but be good to put that detail in, I guess. Yeah.
13 inches?
Yeah, I think that's, the gentleman that was here from the tree company said they've got great chainsaws up to that
Okay.
size, and then beyond that, the technology just isn't there yet.
I could put that in. I just referred to large chainsaws, and I guess I forgot what the dimensions were, so I can put that in.
The only other thing that I'll mention, and I've gotten 3 calls from reporters wanting to ask me about it already, and that's the fact that Lewis just extended their timeframe.
Oh, did they? I saw they were discussing it. I didn't know that they actually had done.
So I
done it.
think they moved everything to 2025.
Yeah, well, I will say this, their ordinance was kind of strange, because they said it already mostly was 2025, but it said, everything, it said handheld equipment will be banned 2023 with the exception of, and then it had leaf blowers and other things. And when we looked at here, we were like, well, what is it that's going to be banned in 2023? We couldn't figure it out. And finally, when I read the article in the Cape Gazette, it said string trimmers are the only thing that they were going to ban in 2023. So I don't know if they moved all their deadlines out, but everything else was going to start for them in 2025. And maybe they just decided to make everything 2025. But so I don't know. I didn't hear that they had actually changed that. I remember the last article I saw said that they were having a discussion.
Yeah, I think they voted on it
Okay.
last week. Any comments from the public on this topic?
Thank you, Dave Diefendorfer, city resident. Just a couple things here. On your number 4, it's not just the removal of the trees. I think, Ed, you covered that when you talked about the 13 inches. There's large limbs that when a fellow's in the tree for trimming, they need those gas-powered chainsaws. And when they have a trimming permit, there is no trimming permit. So the arborist is not involved in all. So having her approve something, she wouldn't even know because she's not involved in trimming. She's only involved in cutting down a tree. So you might want to kind of clarify that to make it easier. Couple other things. I'm going to say it again. I disagree with the gas-powered ban for residents. So again, I have a $700 mower. Why on earth should I be required to turn that mower in? I have solar panels on my roof, so I'm getting no credit for that. I'm not trying to muddy the waters, but according to my solar panels, I've planted 180 trees so far right now. So there's no one size that fits all. I'm doing my part with the solar panels. I want to keep my gas power mower. And if it goes that way, there's two things. Eventually, and I agree, they are a pollutant. And eventually, Lowe's and Home Depot probably won't be able to buy gas power mowers anyway. They'll probably all go to electric. But so something else to think about, who is responsible, if you ban these mowers, who's responsible for recycling them, pulling the oil out of them, the gas out of them? Do I have to do that? Do I have to take that to a recycle place? Or is not everybody has a car that they're going to put their mower in? So is the city going to pick that up? Is the city going to take care of that hazmat problem for everybody and take my mower and my gas and my oil away? So it's just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I think sometimes it's very difficult whenever we make any of these decisions. It's going to hurt some people, but I think we're each part of a world that needs to change. And I mean, of course there's a cost, and of course there's a cost to recycle. There is with cars, you know. I mean but I don't think that should prevent us from taking the steps that we need. We've got to take bold steps if we're going to change things.
So my question is, where else in the country are all gas-powered lawn equipment banned? And could we find out from them how they handled the recycling process? Do you know?
Yeah, I've found that there's quite a few municipalities that have various types of bans, and the state of California has a ban that's not, I don't want to speak to it off the top of my head, but I do know that on a statewide basis, California is phasing out this stuff. And a lot of municipalities, and Washington, D.C. is one, and it usually starts in the urban areas with people complaining about noise. And, you know, everybody hates leaf blowers. That's public enemy number one. All right, so I don't, you know, lawnmowers aren't quite as offensive to people, but a lot of people are very bothered by the noise of leaf blowers. And so that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, and on top of which they do cause a lot of pollution. So a lot of cities have leaf blowers banned, gas-powered. I don't know, can't give you all of the details of which cities do what, but over 100 cities have done something, and the state of California.
So I guess it's just my question is, how did they handle the recycling process? Because I think that's a good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't know. And also, you know, there's people are asking with electric vehicles, how are they going to handle battery disposal issues and things like that? And definitely, you know, it's not a perfect world. We have to figure some of these things out, and I don't have all the answers to it, but.
I will note that I have seen here in Rehoboth Beach what look like old rusty lawnmowers on the curb, hoping that the city would pick it up and dispose of it somehow. So I'm hoping that the city disposes of it properly and takes care of the oil that's still in there. Maybe we can ask the city what their current policy is for old dead lawnmowers, and Kevin could maybe just tell us.
Yeah, I will ask what, you know, I don't know if at our recycle center we accept those things or not. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Also, the landscaping companies, the commercial ones have to replace their equipment fairly regularly, according to what they've said, because how much they use them. I don't know what the rules are to dispose of these things, and I'm sure there are some. You know, it's just like when a car is junked, you have to take it to a special junkyard where they scrap the metal and do things with it, but I imagine a big lawnmower would be a similar thing. You can't just put it in a landfill, but that is a good question, and I don't know the answer.
But I think these are things the commissioners could work out. I think this is an amazing, it's a very effective proposal. And I feel we should put it before the commissioners and let them work out the details.
So my question is, if we want to include the 13-inch chainsaws, where do we do that? I think probably the best place would be in, spell that out in item 3.
Or a separate item in and of itself.
And now, are we talking about making an exemption for 13-inch chainsaws altogether, or,
Anything above 13 inches.
yeah,
Or with permission.
So I would include chainsaws up to 13 inches here in this section, where it's defining what is a gasoline-powered lawn equipment.
okay.
And then the question is, do we want to keep this section 4, which is specifically related to large trees?
Yeah.
Not trimming, though, just.
Now, if we, so we could either just totally exempt the larger chainsaws, and then we wouldn't need the other section about getting permission from the arborist if they're just generally not part of the ban, or we could still just leave it the way I have, but define large chainsaws as those above 13 inches.
I think I would be inclined to, we're defining chainsaws up to 13 inches as being included, so anything above that would be excluded or exempt. Then I would just remove 4 and be silent on it.
Okay.
And I will say, I've got some hesitations related to residents and property owners, but at the end of the day, I get another shot at this, and you know, I'm able to vote on it when it matters. So I'm fine moving this forward, but I just want everyone to, you know, be clear that I do have some reservations when it comes to the residents.
B4 is something for commercial outfits, right? That's not residential people. Large tree removal is not done by residents. So if we got rid of 4 altogether and Sposato has a 20-inch chainsaw, they could use it on anything, whether it's large tree removal or just cleaning up smaller pieces. Do we want that, or do we want to continue to restrict it to large tree removals?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Well,
B4 could just say large tree removals after the effective date. Only gas-powered chain laws are allowed if they're larger than 13 inches. I don't know, does that tackle the problem or not?
yeah, I think I see your point, Charlie. The only thing I will say, just in terms of trying to be optimistic, is that I think the big companies are probably the most willing to go to electric out of any person that's coming before us to talk about this issue. So maybe we can not worry that they're going to try to backslide with chainsaws with the bigger companies, but maybe that's just being optimistic.
I personally say just clarify that chainsaws above 13 inches are exempt, period, myself, and that if they're used for large tree removal or just big giant trimming or branches that have come down in somebody's yard that an electric
I think that
wouldn't be able to handle.
chainsaws of that size aren't the safest thing for people to use, and I would like to believe that people are going to be running around getting large chainsaws to do, you know, smaller.
I don't think someone's going to use a larger chainsaw than they need to.
So
It
you're
just makes the
saying
job more difficult.
Because they're exempt, that people are gonna buy the bigger ones and they're gonna do stuff with the bigger ones, is that
Well,
what you're saying?
that's what Charlie was saying. If we were just going to exclude them, then with the idea that they're going to be used for bigger jobs, but if we just exclude them, then people who can't use the smaller equipment might use the large chainsaws for the smaller, you know, in place of a trimmer or something. So, and yes, that would be allowed, but I guess practically speaking, I don't think that it would really be something going on. So,
Before, and just clarify that anything above 13 inches is exempt.
I guess that's what Ed thinks is the best approach, and I guess after hearing our resident talk about limb removal and how we don't necessarily need the arborist involved in reviewing all these things, I guess maybe the most pragmatic thing to do would be to, in the introductory language, say that, you know, chainsaws under 13 inches are banned, and just be silent about the bigger ones. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
yeah. And then somebody could say, well, I want a bigger one.
Charlie?
Sounds like a fair compromise to me, what Mary said. Do you think that's okay?
And just be silent about the bigger ones.
All right, how do we want to move forward?
Well, I guess we could take a vote that this, with the concepts that we've agreed to, and it's a very minor tweak in the language to add 13 chainsaws smaller than 13 inches to that first section, and then take B4 out, and then that would be the proposal.
No, you can move it with the one revision with the 13-inch chainsaws.
And the removal of 4. Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to move this recommendation with the revisions of identifying 13-inch chainsaws are included in what would be banned is handheld gas-powered equipment, and the removal of Section 4 within the recommendation. We have a motion and a second. I'm going to do individual votes on this. Mary?
Aye.
Nettie?
Aye.
Charlie?
Aye.
Catherine? Aye. And the chair's going to abstain, and the motion carries, and we'll move it forward to the mayor and commissioners. Thank you, especially Mary, for all your hard work on this.
Yay, Mary.
We're going to push pollinator gardens back, and I'm going to skip over non-idling policy because Heather's not here, and she was working on that. So we will talk about HB 134 and the straw-free initiative. So you can take it away.
Okay, I have not written it out beautifully like Mary did, but the straws, plastic straws, and the styrofoam, which is specified in this bill, all the different types of styrofoam, cannot be recycled at least in our current technology. And we have talked about this extensively. We also, as a committee, have done extensive education and turtle folders, and we have involved many different stakeholders, different groups that are concerned about straws and styrofoam containers. And again, I will move about I think Rehoboth should be the leader on this. Most people in Rehoboth that I have talked to are very, very supportive of straws upon request and not using styrofoam. But it just continues, so our education, just having it be voluntary has not succeeded. There's still people that put out straws. There are people that put the straws in Cokes and everything. And of course, it is specified in this bill about where you have to use straws, milkshakes and so on. But that's all in the bill. My suggestion is, and maybe we need to discuss this, is that we be the leader in this. This will be brought up before the legislature. It was passed through the Delaware Senate. They had a recess at the end of June last year, so the House of Representatives of Delaware didn't have a chance to bring this up and vote on it. I suggest that we be the leaders with this, and that the commissioners immediately institute it, and by Memorial Day, begin to come up with an enforcement for this bill, and hopefully be a leader that will lead the state to accept this throughout the state.
So I have two comments. The first one is that, well, I guess kind of a question of whether this similar bill is going to be reintroduced in this legislative session. And if it is, one thing that we could do is come up with something official from the city of Rehoboth Beach to the state legislature, pushing for this to be passed, saying we are a city with a huge tourism industry and are very affected by straws, and please, state legislators, pass this bill, because I think that would be very effective type of lobbying to the state if we could do it as a city rather than individuals. But second, I know we really wanted to do this on the local level for a long time, and I kind of got derailed during COVID, and I think the position we had some people on, it wasn't unanimous. We had a vote, and it was 2-2, and we didn't get anywhere with it, but it was, the businesses have been through enough with the shutdowns and so forth. We don't want to have any new mandates of any kind. So if people have the bandwidth to ask for it again, I would support it as just exactly what we were trying to do 2 years ago. Ask for a city, to be in the city code, that restaurants have to do straws upon request only. So those are two tracks. We can either try to get behind the state and try to push the state to do it do more than just hope that the state will do it, or come up with our own ordinance. I don't know how.
No, I don't see coming up with another ordinance. I think they have gone into extreme, extensive detail about everything and exceptions. I mean, the amendment number 1 was, the substitute number 1 for it is an amendment, you know, that you don't have to do it in certain, there's some restrictions.
It would be great if
yeah.
it could be, that could pass on a statewide
Yeah.
level, yeah.
And I think they have done extensive research on this. And
Do you know if it's going to be reintroduced this year in the legislature, or have you heard anything?
I can't imagine it not being.
Yeah.
I think plastics free
They're-
Delaware would probably sit on the state steps day and night if this
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Well, I think one of the things that maybe, I don't know who, you know, I don't want to volunteer you, Nettie, for more work, but if we could work with Plastic Free Delaware and say that we would like to, as a city in the state, get behind this proposal and ask them what that would look like for that, you know, whatever the state legislator that's going to sponsor the bill, or, you know,
McBride, probably.
yeah, that the city of Rehoboth Beach is in favor of this legislation.
That's a point, but I feel to be hesitant. We have been hesitant so long, and it did not, I mean, those of us who pounded the pavement with, and found a tremendous amount of support, actually. A lot of merchants and restaurateurs were very, very supportive, but then there were no teeth. There was no enforcement. And so to give up all these straws and all these clamshells that are made out of styrofoam, it was just, why should they? Why should they be the only ones? And I think just like the paper bags, until it is enforced, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think we've kind of proved that it doesn't happen, just with voluntary. Even if people, yay, I'm all for this.
Yeah, I know you did a lot of work.
A lot
with-
of us
with
did.
the people and the businesses, and a lot of businesses are already doing
Yeah, true.
some of this work, but others, and a lot of times we found that we didn't get too many that just said no way or no,
Right.
but it was just a question of implementing, and, you know, like, there was one large restaurant that said yes, and they put the signs on the table, but then when you'd go in there, they weren't doing it.
And other
So,
people said yes,
yeah.
and then they, oh yeah, we're all
Yeah.
for it. And then, yeah, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah, so I guess where we're at is, do we want to try it again with our own ordinance, or do we want to just try to push for this HB 134?
Could you clarify for me, because I heard two things. The way I read it is plastic straws are just banned, but you,
Upon request.
okay, but they are available upon request.
Upon request, yes.
Okay,
And I think the bill says that.
okay.
They're available.
At one point, we were talking about a ban with, there are some people with disabilities that need straws, but they don't have to necessarily be plastic straws. So we were going to do plastic straws banned, but other straws upon request. But, you know, but basically, we did a lot of people, not myself, but other people in the committee, a lot of work with the business community just to try and get a voluntary effort going, and never really took it to the next level.
Well, what I would recommend doing is, if you want to proceed with this being in ordinance form, we get it in that format that we've used for other items like the lawn equipment, and we invite to the next meeting, we invite Main Street, the Chamber of Commerce, SOLA, the Homeowners Association, because I think you've got support from some of those groups, and I think that would be an appropriate time to have that support voiced.
That's been voiced. It's already been voiced. I mean, we've heard from SOLA. We've heard, SOLA is 100% behind this. We've heard from Main Street. I mean, it seems like we're just going through it all again. It seems really repetitive to me.
Yeah, I guess, Ed, you weren't,
I
you weren't
wasn't
here for.
I wasn't
for-
here
So
then,
we'll
so-
get, you know, we spent, it was probably one of the first initiatives that the committee
Yeah.
decided to take on, and and there was a lot of effort by certain Nettie and Stuart and other people pounding the pavements, and Charlie, and we got funding for some plaques and, yeah, there was a lot of work, and I will say, the reason it didn't happen wasn't due to community resistance as much as a hesitancy of certain people on the committee to have any, like, actual mandates. I think that at this point, we just have to decide ourselves, do we want to do it or not? And because I think you could do it, but
You know, I think you said it when you said COVID. It really was COVID.
yeah,
It was, I think that it's not that the committee was hesitant. We all believed it was the right thing to
Yeah.
do, but because of COVID,
right,
we said, okay, give these businesses a break. But COVID's over.
yeah.
And now, I love the proposal to the state, but I think, you know, the synopsis right there, let's just throw it out at to the commissioners and see what they say. We addressed this before. Are we willing to take a look at this again? And let them decide whether we go back to having all those people that
I
Ed
think
just
it's a
talked
good
about.
suggestion from Ed that if we want to do it, put it in that final proposal that in the way Stan
Wants it.
likes it. And if you want to put it on the agenda, and if any, and notify the stakeholders if they want to come, and then see how it goes. And you know, I don't think there's any more need for us to individually reach out to anybody, but
I think there's an appetite for support among the mayor and commissioners.
Great. I mean, I feel, I mean, I'd be glad to write up the form and put it with this bill. And I guess I should have done that this time, but to me, to get all of them in for just our meeting seems super repetitive because they're supportive already. And, I mean, I feel it should go to the commissioners. I really do. And I'd be glad to move that.
I could report that several years ago, we went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting at which many of the local businesses attended a big breakfast gathering. Stuart Martins and I went, and all those businesses there said that they were supportive of the idea of keeping the environment clean. People who move to the beach like the environment. I mean, all those business people are nice people. They're not, you know, let's dump stuff all over our beautiful city. So I think that at least one time we've had an opportunity to address the business community was very favorable to this sort of an approach. The nice thing about suggesting to our mayor and commissioners that this has already passed the state senate, and the wisdom and phraseology and the work that the senate has already done gives sort of like the imprimatur of approval that it's a wise choice of language and exceptions and those sorts of things, and that maybe that would make it move smoother rather than having to come up with our own language that's somehow different from what the Senate has already passed.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not saying that it should be rewritten, but I think you copy and paste certain areas and just put it in the format that he likes. Because if it's not in that format, he will not put it on an agenda.
Well, let's put it in that format then.
Okay, could I put it in the format, but we move that it be brought not before our committee again, but before the commissioners? And I can put it in the format of why and, you know, what we've done and so on. maybe you need to tell me again what the format is.
my-
But let it be up to the commissioners how they enforce this, or whether they want to do it ahead of time, or whether they want to support the state, be lobbyists for the state, or how they want to do it. But in the direction, we already have support from other stakeholders and from merchants and so on. Rather than have another public hearing, I really don't think that's necessary.
My preference would be to see it in that format and vote on it at the next meeting. That would be my preference. And it would give one last opportunity for businesses to speak out if they choose.
Okay.
And I think there's real value when we put this, to the mayor and commissioners, that we've given plenty of opportunity for public feedback, and there has not been an outcry from businesses. And
Okay.
I think there's value
I'll
in
have
that.
that ready for the next meeting.
Any comments from the public?
Thanks. Dave Diefendorfer, city resident. The last statement, in addition, the act encourages food establishments not to use or sell food packaged. Want to make it a little stronger? If you're going to make this stronger, encourages? I mean, because instead of those polystyrene, they have the cardboard containers. Just think about it, whether you want to make it a little bit stronger, because I'm not sure encourages does anything, honestly.
Right.
I think,
That's the state wrote that, right? Yeah. So when we present ours, yeah.
and this may have been, so this is the original language. This is, I couldn't see on the website the amendments. So obviously you're going to pull the language from the amendments.
Okay, I hope the committee's not asking me to to rewrite the entire synopsis of this, but.
No, you would just
yeah.
copy and paste.
Okay.
But this is the original.
And there may have been some amendments to it, is
Yeah,
that what you're?
there were amendments to it, but I don't see on this website where the amendments are available.
Okay, it has it right here. An act to amend Title 16 of the Delaware Code relating to the use of single-service plastic implements
maybe
and
this is,
polystyrene containers in food establishment. And I think it was stuff like food being carried in a polystyrene foam freezer, and stuff like that. It's exceptions that are very reasonable.
Well, if there were amendments made to this draft, we'll certainly be able to find it, even if we haven't found it yet, from
right in
Senator
there.
Parody, this is his bill, or from the Plastics Free Delaware, D. Durham. I'm sure we'll be able to provide us with a copy of all the amendments.
But I think David makes a great point. If indeed the final version says encourages, do we want it to say encourages or flat out ban styrofoam?
I think you have to look at the context of that bill, because I think what they're referring to is if an establishment, you have on the one hand a restaurant that can buy their own packages and decide what they're going to put the stuff in, but then you might have another establishment that has, stuff that's already been prepackaged.
Right.
So I guess just looking at that and not looking at the overall bill, they're saying they're not going to enforce companies, establishments to not buy from other people.
Right.
They're just encouraging. So that's something that's maybe not a big point in terms of
I think that-
restaurants, but, I don't know.
I think it just needs to be more clear. If we're banning them from buying takeout containers that they're going to use and put stuff in,
Yeah.
that's fine. And if it's just an encouragement not to buy prepackaged stuff, and I can't think of an instance, but maybe there's limitation in that. So they're encouraging them not to, but not an all-out ban.
Yeah, it's not something we ever talked about here before, that concept, but we don't have to do exactly the same as what the state, we can maybe do something a bit more simple.
The amendments may have taken care of this. We'll take a look at those amendments and see what they say.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're all in agreement, and we'll have this in final form at the next meeting to vote on and move forward.
I might need some help from Charlie.
Charlie, you're nominated to help Nettie on
If-
I'd
this.
love to
mean,
work
if
with
you
Nettie.
can- If you can look at. what I
Nettie's a
come up
wonderful person. Unfortunately, I'm leaving for New Zealand for the entire month of January, so I'm not going to be available to help as much as I might, but,
Well, I'm happy to help.
with. Okay.
oh, good, thank you.
With that, I'm going to ask, we started late and we're already at noon, and the city staff needs to go to lunch. So I'm going to ask if any committee members have any final comments or any comments from the public.
I hope that the next meeting, it was on the agenda to each of us picking something that we really want to specialize in.
The liaisons?
Yeah, the liaisons. And so I hope we can talk about that at the next meeting. I
Yeah,
think that's
you
very
know-
important.
Yeah. Why don't we just do that real quick? If everyone wants to tell me what they're thinking, and then I'll type it up and have it ready for the next meeting.
Well, since I brought it up, I'll mention it. I would like to work with DART and with transportation. I feel that transportation is, and our traffic is one of our greatest polluters. And of course, I think we need to have a committee about that because we're also talking about our cityscape and all kinds of things. It's very complex.
So I'm gonna
course.
tag team you on that, DART and the Streets and Transportation Committee
Yeah.
for the city, which
Okay.
I also chair, so.
Oh,
So
great,
that's a good.
great,
That's a good mix.
great. Okay.
Mary, were you thinking of any liaisons
With other city committees?
or organizations like the Homeowners Association or Main Street Chamber of Commerce?
No, I don't really have a thought on that. I obviously kind of interested in trees and things like that, so.
How about the Trees and Green Infrastructure Committee?
Okay, yeah.
Charlie?
Well, as you know, I've been interested in pollinator gardens, which is sort of the same topic of trees and gardens and things. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
On the other hand, I'm also very interested in the Boardwalk and Beach Committee, which has been trying to get the recycling bins going on the beach and generally improving the cleanliness of our beach and boardwalk area. I'd be happy to be that and maybe let Mary be the tree and garden liaison.
I think Beach and Boardwalk is an important one, so thank you. Catherine?
Well, I would have done the pollinator gardens as well, but one thing that I'm interested in is water management, individual homeowner water management. I don't know if we have any committee that looks at that, but rain gardens and you're not allowed to flush your water over to my yard. You have to figure out how to manage your own water coming off your house, or I'm not really
I think that's the Environment Committee.
Yeah.
Well, we do have a stormwater task force right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And I think, I imagine that the Homeowners Association is going to be pretty involved in that too. Let
Didn't
me
we ask-
give some thought on that one.
Didn't we ask Eric Seward to be our liaison to the Stormwater Commission, or was that Joe? I forget.
I don't remember.
I'm on
Oh,
it.
Joe is on that task force.
Yeah, and I'm on it, and Eric's on it. Three of us
Oh,
are.
all three of you on it. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's,
Well, we're
That's
triple
good.
dog teaming it. Maybe we could do the same with
Yeah.
pollinator gardens.
Yeah, I'm really interested in native plants and pollinators and trees.
Well, you can do, I'll find another committee if you
We
want to
could
do
do it together,
Yeah.
I mean, there's,
or whatever.
I mean, you both can go to those meetings or stay in touch with them. With that, any other comments?
Are we gonna go to Fridays for meetings? Fridays aren't good for me, but I can try to rearrange. Did you decide that?
I did, because I'm having a problem on Thursday mornings. But now the next two meetings on Friday mornings are going to be a problem because the mayor has scheduled budget meetings on Friday morning. So I will communicate with everyone via email on other options. Okay? Any other comments from the public? All right, thank you. Okay.